That night started with a moment so small, most people would have missed it. But she didn't. Because sometimes the quietest moments hit you the hardest. Myra had spent the whole evening trying to pretend she was fine. She wasn't. And Aaron seemed to be the only person who noticed. They had known each other for years, long enough to see each other through awkward phases, impossible deadlines, and the kind of late-night conversations that only happen when two people feel weirdly safe together. Yet nothing about that night felt familiar. Because for the first time ever, the way he looked at her felt different. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just different in a way that pressed gently on her chest and wouldn't let go. The community center had hosted a volunteer appreciation dinner, which sounded far more cheerful than it actually felt. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking dishes, but Myra had spent most of the night drifting at the edges of every conversation. She wasn't sad. She wasn't upset. She just felt dimmer than usual, like someone had lowered her brightness without warning. And Aaron, who rarely missed anything, picked up on it long before she admitted it to herself. He found her near the back of the hall, pretending to be fully engaged in a conversation about upcoming event schedules. She smiled on cue, nodded at the right moments, but her eyes kept drifting. She didn't even notice he was watching her from across the room. Not the intense, dramatic stare people exaggerate in stories. Something gentler. Something like concern and hesitation, mixed with an understanding he wasn't sure he had permission to show. When she slipped out of the hall for a moment of quiet, she expected no one to notice. She especially didn't expect him to follow. But he did. Myra stepped into one of the empty classrooms, grateful for the silence. The soft hum of the building felt almost comforting. She leaned against a table and pressed both hands to her face. She hadn't realized how tired she was until the quiet finally let her feel it. Then the door opened. She looked up so fast she almost lost her balance. Aaron stepped inside, gently letting the door fall shut behind him. His voice was soft. "Hey. I didn't mean to scare you." "You didn't," she said, though her heart was still catching up. "I just needed a breather." He nodded, taking a few slow steps toward her, but stopping far enough to give her space. "I know," he said quietly. "You looked like you needed one." And that was when he gave her that look. The one she would think about long after that night ended. The one she wasn't sure she was supposed to see. It wasn't romantic in the obvious sense. There was no dramatic music, no sparkly moment, no realization painted in bright colors. It was just real. A look that said he noticed her. Not the version she presented at the dinner. Not the cheerful mask she wore for everyone else. The tiredness behind her eyes. The tightness in her shoulders. The way her smile didn't reach as high as usual. And somehow, he understood all of that without her saying a single word. She swallowed, unsure what to do with the heaviness suddenly sitting in her chest. "Aaron. I'm fine. Really." He shook his head softly, not in disagreement but in something closer to gentle disbelief. "You don't have to be," he said. "At least not with me." Myra felt her throat tighten, but not in a painful way. More like someone had suddenly acknowledged something she'd been quietly carrying alone. She forced a small smile. "You always say the right thing, you know that." "I don't," he replied, with a quiet laugh. "Half the time I think I'm saying the wrong thing at the wrong moment." "But you came after me." "Yeah," he said. "I did." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It wasn't heavy. It just settled around them like a soft blanket. Still, Myra couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, not in a loud or dramatic way, but like a door had quietly clicked open somewhere inside her. Aaron rubbed the back of his neck, looking suddenly unsure. "I can leave if you want time alone." She didn't answer right away. She should have told him yes. She should have asked for space. She should have stood there like nothing unusual was happening at all. But she didn't want him to leave. Not when he was the only one who had noticed she wasn't okay. Not when his presence felt strangely steadying. Not when that look still lingered in her mind, warm and confusing at the same time. "No," she said softly. "You can stay." He nodded once, almost relieved. But neither of them expected what he said next. "Myra, something feels different tonight." I don't know if you feel it too, but... He hesitated. She inhaled. The moment stretched thin, delicate, and charged with something she couldn't name yet. And before he could finish the sentence, something outside the door crashed loudly, making both of them jump. The spell broke. But the feeling did not. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. She looked at him, heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with the noise. Aaron, what were you going to say? He took a slow breath. That depends, he said. Do you really want to know? The question hung in the air, soft and dangerous in a way she didn't understand yet. Myra wasn't sure why her heart was beating so fast. Maybe it was the sudden noise in the hallway. Maybe it was being alone in a quiet room with someone who had always felt safe. Or maybe it was the unfinished sentence hanging in the air like a thread she wasn't sure she should pull. Aaron stood a few steps away, steady and unsure all at once. He wasn't dramatic by nature. He never rushed into feelings or moments. He never pushed for conversations she wasn't ready for. But that night, something felt shifted, tilted, quietly rearranged. He looked at her the way someone does when they've been thinking about something for a long time, but haven't found the courage to put it into words. Still, Myra tried to lighten the moment, even though her voice felt softer than usual. You can't just drop a sentence like that and then stop halfway. Aaron let out a nervous laugh. Yeah, I figured. He moved a little closer, but still left enough space for her to breathe. Before I say anything, I need to know you're okay. Really okay? She wasn't sure how to answer. The truth felt too heavy and too simple at the same time. I'm tired, she admitted. Just one of those days where everything feels like a little too much. He nodded slowly. I get that. No advice. No pushing. Just the kind of understanding she didn't realize she had been craving. She sighed and leaned back against the table. I didn't mean to worry you. You didn't, he said quietly. But I noticed. She looked up. You always notice. That made something flicker in his expression, something quiet but unmistakably real. He took a breath, the kind people take when they're about to step into unknown territory. Okay, he said softly. Then, let me try to finish what I was going to say. Myra straightened, heart tightening with something between anticipation and fear. Tonight feels different, he began. I don't know why. Maybe nothing has changed at all and it's just me. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm reading too much into the way you walked out of the hall, or the way you're looking at me right now. She blinked, surprised. I'm not looking at you any special way. He raised an eyebrow gently. Myra, you are. Her face warmed, and she looked away, hoping he didn't notice. But he always noticed. He stepped a little closer, voice low and steady. Every time something weighs on you, you pull back from the room but you never pull back from me. I don't know if you realize that. She hadn't. Not until he said it. I just feel comfortable around you, she said. That's all. I know, he replied. And that means something. The room felt quieter than before, as if the building itself was listening. But just as he opened his mouth to continue, footsteps echoed down the hall, cutting through the delicate tension. Myra turned toward the sound, her breath catching. She didn't know why she felt nervous. The community center was perfectly safe, but moments like this always felt fragile, as if the smallest interruption could change everything. The doorknob rattled once. Both of them stilled. Then the footsteps moved away, fading with distance. Aaron let out a slow breath. Okay, he murmured. This night really doesn't want me to finish a single sentence. She laughed under her breath, the sound shaky but genuine. Maybe it's a sign. Of what? He asked. That you're making me nervous. He froze. Not in shock. More like the words hit him somewhere he didn't expect to be vulnerable. Myra, am I? He asked quietly. She hesitated. Not because she wanted to avoid the truth, but because she wasn't sure she had the right name for what she was feeling. Yes, she whispered. But not in a bad way. Aaron stepped forward before he even realized he had. Only one step. Just enough to close the faint distance between them. She could feel the shift in the air, cautious, unsure, but undeniably warm. You don't have to explain, he said softly. Not tonight. I just want you to know. I'm here. Whatever this is, whatever you're feeling, whatever tonight becomes. I'm here. Her chest tightened at the sincerity in his voice. She wanted to respond with something equally honest, but before she could speak, he gently touched her elbow, barely a touch, more like a question than a gesture. Myra, he said, almost a whisper. Can I ask you something? She looked up. Yes. His eyes softened in a way that made her stomach twist. Why did you really walk out of that room tonight? She hadn't expected that. Her heartbeat stumbled. Because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't a single reason. It wasn't something she knew how to say without admitting things she wasn't sure she was ready to admit. She opened her mouth, then closed it. And he waited, eyes steady, patient, silently telling her she didn't need to hide. Finally, she exhaled. Aaron. I walked out because being around everyone felt overwhelming. He nodded. But that's only part of it, she added. His breathing shifted, barely noticeable but enough for her to feel it. What's the rest? He asked. She hesitated, eyes lowering. And then she whispered. I walked out because when I saw you laughing across the room, something in me felt different. And I didn't know what to do with that. The look on his face shattered into surprise and something warmer, something she couldn't name. Before he could answer, a phone buzzed loudly on the table beside her, startling both of them. She reached for it with trembling fingers. Aaron watched her, his expression caught between hope and something that felt like fear. The phone buzz felt too loud in the quiet room. Myra stared at the screen without really seeing the message. Her thoughts were still tangled in what she had just admitted. Those words she never meant to say out loud, at least not tonight. When she finally placed the phone back on the table, her hands were still unsteady. Aaron watched her with a gentleness that made breathing a little harder. You okay? He asked softly. She nodded. Yeah. It was just unexpected. He smiled at her lightly. I think we're both having a night full of unexpected things. The truth of that settled between them. Myra took a small breath, grounding herself. I didn't mean to make things weird. I just wanted to be honest. You didn't make anything weird, he replied. I'd rather you be honest than pretend everything is fine. His voice had a warmth to it that made her chest tighten with something both comforting and terrifying. She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear and let out a shaky laugh. I feel like I'm saying everything wrong tonight. You're not, he said. You're just saying things you've never said before. She went still. He was right. That was exactly what it felt like. New words. New truths. New territory she wasn't sure how to walk through without slipping. Aaron shifted his weight slightly, as if bracing himself for whatever might come next. Myra, he began. What you said earlier, about feeling different when you looked at me across the room. What did that feel like? If you can tell me. She swallowed hard. She had no plan for this conversation. No script. No practiced explanation. But the look in his eyes, patient, steady, open, made her want to try. I don't know, she admitted. It wasn't dramatic, or sudden. It was more like a quiet moment that didn't fit with everything else around me. He nodded slowly. And when I saw you laughing, she continued, it wasn't jealousy or anything strange. It was just, like something inside me shifted. Something I didn't know was allowed to shift. Aaron's breathing changed, softening just a little. Myra, he said, almost a whisper. It's allowed. Her gaze snapped up. He held her eyes for a long, steady second that made her whole body feel warm. You don't have to rush, he added. You don't have to name anything you're not ready to name. But nothing you're feeling is wrong. She didn't realize she had been holding her breath until that moment. The air left her lungs all at once, replaced with something gentler. I'm scared to say the wrong thing, she said quietly. He shook his head. There's nothing wrong in being honest. Even if the words come out messy. She let that sink in. For years, their friendship had been easy, dependable, familiar, steady. She never imagined stepping outside the edges of that comfort. And yet, here they stood. Talking about feelings they had never expected to acknowledge. Feelings that felt fragile, new, uncertain. Aaron stepped closer, not too much, just one slow, careful step, enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. "You don't have to tell me everything tonight," he said gently. "But I'm not going anywhere. I hope you know that." "I do," she whispered. "I think that's what scares me." He blinked, startled. "Why would that scare you?" "Because when someone consistently stays," she said softly, "it becomes harder to imagine what would happen if they finally didn't." That hit him harder than she expected. His expression warmed with something protective, something almost pained. "Myra, I'm not planning on leaving your life." His voice was steady, almost firm. "Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not quietly. Not suddenly." The certainty in his tone made her heart soften in a way that felt almost overwhelming. But then he hesitated. Like there was something he still hadn't said. Something he was wrestling with. She watched him, waiting. "Myra," he said quietly, "can I tell you something I probably should have said a long time ago?" Her pulse fluttered. "Yes," she whispered. But before he could speak, footsteps approached again, slower this time, right outside the door. Myra's breath caught. Aaron's expression shifted, the moment tightening in midair. A soft knock echoed through the empty classroom. They both froze. "Myra," a voice called gently from the hallway. "Are you in there?" She knew that voice. One of the event coordinators, kind, friendly, utterly unaware of the delicate moment she had just interrupted. Myra glanced at Aaron, uncertainty flooding her chest. "Do you want to answer?" he whispered. She hesitated. If she opened that door, the fragile honesty of this moment might slip away. If she didn't, she wasn't sure what she was stepping into next. The knock came again, softer this time. "Myra, we're wrapping up soon." Myra swallowed, torn between two worlds. Aaron took a breath, then gave her a small, reassuring nod, warm, understanding, patient. As if saying silently, "Whatever you choose. I'll be here." She stepped toward the door, but stopped halfway. Her hand hovered inches from the doorknob. She turned back to him, voice trembling. "Aaron, after I talk to her, can you stay? Just a little longer?" His expression softened into something unmistakable. "Of course," he said. "As long as you need." That warmth spread through her chest again, slow, steady, terrifying in the best way. But just as she reached for the door, his voice stopped her one more time. "Myra." She looked back. "When you come back," he said softly, "I think I'll finally be ready to tell you the thing I've been holding on to." Her breath caught again. She wasn't sure what he was going to tell her. But she knew it mattered. She opened the door. And the moment between them hung in the air, delicate and unfinished. Myra stepped into the hallway, gently closing the door behind her. The soft click sounded louder than she expected, as if it marked the pause of something big, something she wasn't ready to define yet. The event coordinator smiled warmly when she saw her. "There you are. I just wanted to let you know we're finishing up. We didn't want to leave without telling you." Myra nodded, offering a small, grateful smile. "Thanks. I'll be out in a minute." "No rush," the coordinator said. "Take whatever time you need." Then she walked away, leaving the hallway quiet again. Myra stood there for a moment, letting her thoughts settle. Her pulse was still unsteady. Her mind still replayed every word Aaron had said inside that room. "Tonight feels different. It's allowed. I'm not planning on leaving your life. I think I'll finally be ready to tell you." Each sentence echoed through her like a soft, warm wave that kept returning, never losing its strength. She wasn't used to moments like this, moments that felt delicate enough to break but important enough to fight for. When she finally inhaled and exhaled steadily, she turned and opened the classroom door again. Aaron stood where she had left him, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly tense. But the second he saw her, something in his expression eased, like he'd been holding his breath and finally let it go. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Yeah. They just wanted to let me know they're closing up." He gave a small smile. "Good. I didn't go anywhere." "I knew you wouldn't," she said softly. That made something flicker in his eyes, something warm, almost relieved. She stepped closer, but not too close. Just enough to show she wasn't pulling away. Aaron, she said, voice gentle, you said you had something to tell me. He let out a long breath, the kind people take before stepping into something uncertain. Yeah, he murmured. I do. She waited. He shifted slightly, and it struck her how rare it was to see him nervous. He wasn't the type to fidget or stumble through words. But tonight, his calm exterior had small fractures, enough to show he cared deeply about whatever he was about to say. Myra, he paused. Can I ask something first? Of course. Earlier, he said slowly. When you said something felt different when you looked at me, did you mean that? Or was it just the moment? It wasn't the moment, she said. I meant it. His shoulders softened. Okay, he whispered. Another pause settled between them, gentle but charged. When I walked into this room earlier, he began, I was only planning to check on you. Nothing more. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. She nodded. But then, he continued, the second you looked up at me, something in me shifted too. Something I've been trying not to acknowledge for a long time. Her breath caught. I didn't know it was still there, he admitted. Or maybe I didn't want to know. Myra's heart pressed tight against her ribs. What do you mean? She asked softly. He looked down for a moment, searching for words he had clearly kept buried. When we first became close, he said, I felt something for you. Something I tried to ignore because our friendship mattered too much to risk. Her eyes widened. I thought it was just a phase, he continued. I thought it would go away if I focused on being your friend instead. And did it? She asked quietly. He met her eyes, and the answer was right there, warm and unmistakable. No, he said. It never did. Her breath trembled. Aaron, she whispered. He held up a hand, not to stop her, but to steady himself. I wasn't going to say anything, he said. Not tonight. Not ever, probably. But then you looked at me like you saw me differently. And I haven't stopped thinking about it since. Myra felt the room shrink around them, not in a suffocating way, more like every distraction had faded, leaving nothing but the truth between them. I don't want to rush you, he said gently. I don't want to push you into anything. But I also don't want to pretend I don't feel what I feel. Not anymore. She swallowed, voice quiet and unsteady. What do you feel? He stepped closer. One slow, intentional step. The air changed between them, soft, warm, careful. I care about you, he said. More than I've let myself admit. More than I meant to. More than I can undo. Her eyes stung, in the gentlest way. I didn't know, she whispered. I know, he said softly. I made sure you didn't. But, why? She asked. Because your happiness always mattered more than my feelings. And if saying nothing kept things steady for you, that was enough for me. The honesty of that hit her so deeply she forgot how to breathe for a moment. She stepped closer without even realizing she had moved. Aaron, she whispered, I'm not asking for an answer right now, he said. I'm just asking, does any part of you feel the same? Even just a little? Her heart fluttered. She opened her mouth. But before the words could leave her, the sound of the hallway lights powering down echoed through the building, a soft hum fading into silence. The center was closing. And the moment stayed suspended, fragile, unfinished, waiting for her next breath. The hallway lights clicked off one by one, sending a soft ripple of darkness through the building. Myra and Aaron stood frozen in the quiet room, the fading hum of electricity settling between them like a reminder that time was running out, at least for this night. But the moment wasn't gone. Not yet. Aaron gave a small, almost shy smile. I guess that means we should wrap up soon. Myra nodded, but she didn't move. Neither did he. She could feel the question still hanging in the air, the one he had asked just before the lights dimmed. Does any part of you feel the same? Even just a little? Her heartbeat felt uneven, not in a panicked way, but in a way that told her she couldn't lie anymore. Aaron, she said softly. I didn't walk away from the dinner to avoid people. I walked away because being in that room made me realize something I wasn't ready to face. He took a slow breath. And what was that? She stepped toward him, the quietest step, but one that closed the distance in a way she couldn't take back. "That I don't see you the same way I used to," she whispered. His expression shifted, hopeful, careful, almost afraid to believe her. "Myra, what does that mean?" She exhaled shakily. "I think a part of me felt something for you before I even realized it. Something I didn't understand. Something I pushed down because I thought it would complicate everything." He swallowed, waiting. "But tonight," she continued, "it didn't feel complicated. It just felt honest." Aaron's eyes softened with a warmth that made her chest ache. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I don't want you to say something you might regret later." "I won't regret telling the truth," she said. "Not this time." He let out a breath he had clearly been holding. "Myra, you don't know what that means to me." She smiled, small but real. "I think I do." The room felt warmer now, softer, even with the shadows stretching across the walls. It almost felt like the building itself was giving them space. Myra slowly reached for the edge of the table behind her and leaned against it, grounding herself. "Aaron," she said gently, "I've always trusted you. Even when I didn't trust myself. And maybe that's part of what scares me." He stepped closer, carefully, respectfully, until he was close enough for her to sense the steady calm he always carried. "What scares you?" he asked. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "That if I let myself feel what I'm feeling right now, everything between us will change." He nodded slowly. "It will," he admitted. "But change doesn't mean it'll fall apart. It could mean things grow. It could mean things get better." She blinked, surprised at the simplicity of his answer. "Better," she echoed. He gave a small, honest smile. "Myra, being around you has always been one of the easiest parts of my life. If something grows from that, I don't see how it could ever be worse." Her chest tightened. The good kind of tight. The kind that felt like a heart shifting into a new shape. She took a slow breath. "What happens now?" she asked. "Well," he said with a soft laugh, "first we probably should leave before we get locked inside the building." She smiled, easing the tension a little. "Good point. But after that," he continued, voice gentler now, "we take things one step at a time. No pressure. No rushing. Just seeing where this goes if we both want that." She felt her heart settle into something warm, steady, and calm. "I think I want that," she said quietly. His eyes softened in the way she had never noticed before, or maybe never allowed herself to see. "Then that's enough," he murmured. He didn't move to hold her. He didn't reach out too quickly. He didn't break the fragile magic of the moment. He simply offered his hand. Not dramatic. Not symbolic. Just a gesture that said, "Let's step into this together, carefully, honestly, without fear." Myra looked at his hand for a long second. Then she placed hers in his. Warm. Steady. Unexpected in the best possible way. The simple touch felt like the beginning of something real, not a perfect story, not a dramatic twist, just two people stepping slowly into feelings that had been quietly waiting for them. Aaron let out a soft breath of relief, as if her touch answered every unspoken question he'd been carrying. "Walk out with me?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Yeah. I'd like that." They walked toward the door hand in hand, the classroom light fading behind them as they stepped into the hallway. Before they left the building, Myra stopped and looked up at him, her voice quiet, sincere, and steady. "Aaron." He turned to her. "Yeah. Thank you," she said. "For seeing me, even when I didn't see myself." He smiled, warm, soft, and full of something unmistakable. "I always have, Myra," he replied. "Maybe tonight, you finally looked back." The door clicked shut behind them. And for the first time in a long time, the night didn't feel heavy. It felt like the beginning of something quietly beautiful. Something neither of them had expected. But both of them were ready to explore.